A 160-pound Kangal walked into a family courtroom in Knoxville, Tennessee. The judge told the bailiff to remove the animal. The 4-year-old girl on the witness bench hadn't spoken a word in 11 months. She grabbed the dog's collar with both hands and opened her mouth. What came out made the court reporter stop typing. But that's not where this starts. It starts 7 months earlier at 3:08 a.m. in a shelter outside Nashville with a dog that had bitten 2 people and a man who had 17 days to prove he was a fit father. His name was Sultan, 160 pounds of pale fawn with a black mask that covered everything from his muzzle to the back of his skull. His head was massive, wider than a man's chest, and his neck was so thick it looked like the rest of his body had been built to support it. When he stood still, he didn't look like a pet. He looked like something that belonged on a hillside in central Turkey, guarding a flock against wolves. His bark was deep enough to rattle a window from 20 feet away. His coat was short but dense, and if you pressed your hand into it, it was like pushing into a warm carpet that pushed back. He smelled like dry grass and dust, even indoors. Sultan had been surrendered by a rancher in rural Tennessee, who said the dog had nipped a delivery driver and bitten a farmhand on the forearm. The bite broke skin. The shelter report said, livestock guardian breed, high territorial drive, bite history, not suitable for homes with children. He'd been at the Davidson County shelter for 193 days. 14 families looked at him. Everyone said no. The volunteers walked other dogs twice a day. Sultan got walked once, then early morning by the one handler he'd let near him. A woman named Diane who weighed 120 pounds and held his leash with both hands. He didn't pull, he just walked beside her with his head low and his eyes scanning the tree line, like he was looking for something that wasn't there. By month 5, Sultan stopped eating his full meals. He'd take 3 bites, then lie down with his chin on the rim of the bowl and close his eyes. Diane started sitting outside his kennel on her lunch break. She didn't go in. She just sat on the concrete with her back against the chain link, eating a sandwich, not talking. Sultan would press his back against the fence from the inside until their spines were almost touching through the wire. In Knoxville, 2 hours east, Aaron Cole was making his daughter's lunch at 5:50 a.m. Turkey sandwich, no crust. Apple slices, a juice box with the straw already poked in because Iris couldn't do it herself. She was 4, she used to talk, full sentences by age 2, questions by 2.5, little songs she made up in the bathtub. Then the divorce happened. Aaron's wife, Michelle, moved to Memphis. The custody hearing was ugly, not violent, just the kind of quiet that cuts deeper. Accusations about Aaron's work schedule, his income, his 1-bedroom apartment. The judge granted shared custody. But Michelle's lawyer filed a motion 6 months later, arguing the arrangement was unstable. Aaron had 17 days until the next hearing. Iris hadn't spoken in 11 months, not a word. Not to Aaron, not to her preschool teacher, not to the child psychologist Michelle's lawyer had insisted on. The psychologist's report said, selective mutism, likely stress-induced. Aaron read that sentence 14 times. He kept the report on the kitchen counter, under the coffee maker, where he could see the corner of it every morning. He didn't tell anyone this, but every night after Iris fell asleep, he sat on the hallway floor outside her bedroom door and said things to her through the gap, just quiet things, about his day, about what they'd do tomorrow, about nothing. She never answered, but he never stopped. Aaron's older brother, Dean, was the one who drove him to the shelter, not for a big dog, for a small one, something Iris could hold, something that might make her feel safe enough to talk again. Dean had read an article about therapy animals. Aaron said fine, he'd try anything. They walked through the shelter at 9:15 on a Saturday. 31 dogs, everyone barking, scratching, spinning. Iris was on Aaron's hip, her face pressed into his neck, her fingers gripping his shirt collar. She didn't look at any of them. Dean pointed at a cocker spaniel. Aaron nodded. They were filling out the paperwork when Iris lifted her head. She was looking down the hallway. Last kennel on the right, the only silent one. Sultan was lying on his side with his back to the gate. His black mask was facing the wall. He wasn't moving. Iris squirmed. Aaron put her down. She walked, not ran, walked, down the hallway in her light-up sneakers, past every barking dog, and stopped in front of Sultan's kennel. She crouched down and put both palms flat on the chain link. Sultan's ear rotated, then his head turned. He looked at her through the fence with both eyes. Dark amber, almost copper. He didn't stand. Now he slid his body across the concrete floor until his back was pressed against the gate, against her hands. She could feel the warmth of him through the wire, the vibration of his breathing. She stayed like that for almost 2 minutes. Then she did something she hadn't done in 11 months. She made a sound, Not a word. A hum. Low, steady, almost like a purr. Sultan's tail moved. Once, a single slow sweep across the concrete. Diane, the handler, was standing 10 feet away. She put her hand over her mouth. Dean said, "Aaron, that dog has a bite history." Aaron looked at his daughter's hands on the fence. He looked at the card on the kennel. Sultan, Kangal, 160 pounds, bite history, not suitable for children. He looked at Iris. She hadn't taken her eyes off the dog. "I'll sign for him," Aaron said. Dean stared at him. "Nuri, Michelle's lawyer will use this against you. A 160-pound dog with a bite record in a one-bedroom apartment with a 4-year-old. "I know," Aaron said. He signed the papers at 10:02 a.m. The first 3 days, Sultan broke a baby gate by walking through it. He ate a sneaker. He knocked over a floor lamp with his tail and stood in the dark hallway looking mildly offended that the light was gone. He took up the entire couch. Aaron slept on the floor. But with Iris, Sultan did something no one expected. And it wasn't gentle. It was strange. Every night after Aaron put Iris to bed at 7:45, Sultan walked into her room and lay down across the doorway. Not beside the bed. Across the door, blocking it. If Aaron tried to step over him to check on Iris, Sultan didn't growl. He just stood up, looked at Aaron, then looked at Iris. Ian then lay back down, like he was saying, "She's fine. I'm here. Go away." At first, Aaron thought it was territorial. He called the shelter. Diane said, "That's what Kangals do. They don't guard the house. They guard the flock. Iris is his flock." But there was something else. Every night around 2 or 3 a.m., Sultan would stand up, walk to Iris's bed, and press his head against the mattress. He'd hold it there for 10 seconds, breathing slow. Then he'd go back to the doorway and lie down. Every night. Aaron only knew because he was awake. He was always awake. One night at 3:08 a.m., Aaron was sitting in the hallway when he heard something through Iris's open door. Sultan was at the bed, his head against the mattress, and Iris was humming. The same low hum from the shelter, eyes closed, asleep, but humming. Sultan's tail swept once. Yet Aaron pressed his back against the hallway wall and put his fist against his mouth. His shoulders shook, but nothing came out. He didn't tell anyone, not Dean, not the psychologist. He was afraid if he named it, it would stop. A dog like Sultan usually gets written off. Bite history, dangerous breed, too big for a one-bedroom. If you want to hear what happened in that courtroom, subscribe, because it's the part that changed 2 lives. The custody hearing was on a Thursday in April. Michelle's lawyer presented the psychologist's report. Iris still hadn't spoken. He presented photos of Aaron's apartment. He presented Sultan's shelter record, enlarged on a screen. Bite history, not suitable for children. He asked the judge to grant Michelle full custody on grounds of safety and developmental concern. The argument was clean and logical and hard to argue with. Aaron's lawyer asked for one thing. He asked the judge to let Iris speak, or not speak, on her own terms. The judge agreed. Iris was brought to the witness bench. She sat in the chair with her feet not touching the floor, her hands in her lap, her eyes on the table. The court-appointed advocate asked her 3 questions. "Iris, can you tell me who you live with?" "Nothing." "Can you tell me about your home?" "Nothing." "Is there anything you'd like to say?" "Nothing." Michelle's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this child has not spoken in 11 months. The environment is clearly—" Then the door opened. Sultan walked in. Aaron hadn't planned it. Dean had been watching Sultan in the hallway. And the dog had pulled the leash out of Dean's hand and pushed through the courtroom door with his head. The judge said, "Remove that animal." The bailiff stepped forward. Iris looked up. She saw Sultan. She slid off the chair. She walked across the courtroom floor in her light-up sneakers, the ones that blinked pink with every step. She grabbed Sultan's collar with both hands. Sultan sat down. 160 pounds of fawn and black mask, sitting on the courtroom floor, perfectly still. Iris opened her mouth. "This is my dog?" 3 words, the first words she'd said in 11 months. Her voice was small and rough, like a hinge that hadn't been used in a long time. But every person in that room heard it. The court reporter's hands stopped moving. Michelle, sitting in the second row, pressed both palms flat against her eyes. The advocate looked at the judge. The judge was still. Her pen was on the table. Her hand was over her mouth. Iris leaned her forehead against Sultan's neck. Sultan didn't move. His tail swept once across the tile. Then Iris said 4 more words. Quiet. Almost a whisper. "He sleeps at my door." The judge called a 15-minute recess. It lasted 40. When she came back, she denied the motion for full custody. She ordered a new evaluation. She said one sentence that Aaron's lawyer later told him he'd never heard a family court judge say. The court recognizes that stability, for a child, does not always look the way we expect it to. Aaron was in the hallway afterward. Iris was on his hip. Sultan was at his side. Dean walked up and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he put his hand on Sultan's head, the first time he'd touched the dog, and left it there. Today Sultan is 5, 162 pounds. Iris is 6. She talks now. Not as much as other kids, but enough. Short sentences, direct. She tells people her dog is bigger than their dog, which is usually true. Every night at 7:45, Sultan walks into her room and lies across the doorway. Every night around 3 a.m., he presses his head against the mattress. Iris still hums in her sleep. Michelle calls twice a week now. She asked Aaron last month if Iris could bring Sultan when she visits Memphis. Aaron said yes. The first time Sultan walked into Michelle's apartment, he checked every room: bathroom, bedroom, closet, kitchen, then walked to the spot where Iris was sitting on the floor coloring and lay down beside her. Michelle watched from the hallway. She didn't say anything. She poured a bowl of water and set it by the front door. Dean has a photo on his phone from the courtroom hallway, taken right after the ruling. Aaron is sitting on a bench with Iris on his lap. Sultan is on the floor, leaning against Aaron's legs. Iris has both hands buried in Sultan's coat. No one is looking at the camera. Dean has never posted it. He just looks at it sometimes. On the shelter's website, Sultan's adoption listing is still up. The photo shows him lying on the concrete with his back to the camera. Under status, someone updated it 3 months after Aaron signed the papers. It says one word: home. Would you have signed for a 160-pound dog with a bite history when your custody hearing was 17 days away? Tell me in the comments.